If you've been scrolling through endless lists of floor-standing speakers, reading specs that sound like a sci-fi manual, and still feel like you might end up with a pricey Niceto Have that sits in a corner gathering dust, this review is here to clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent a good chunk of my weekend actually setting up a pair of these in a typical living room, listening to a mix of movies, jazz records, and that gaming with a neighbor's session that always pushes a system to its limits. The question isn't just does it sound good? It's does it fit my space, my budget, and my listening habits without turning my room into a noise pollution zone? Let's break it down. First off, who should even consider the Klipsch Forte 4 Heritage speakers? If you already have a decent amp or receiver, say something that can comfortably push 100 watts per channel, and you're looking for a loudspeaker that will make a living room feel like a mini theater without the need for a separate subwoofer, these are a solid match. The three-way design, with a 12-inch woofer backed by a horn-loaded mid-range driver and a titanium tweeter, gives them a natural ability to fill a medium-sized room, think 250,300 square feet, with a balanced soundstage. That means you'll get clear dialogue in an Avengers movie, a tight bass line that you can feel on the floor, and a smooth high-frequency response that lets a saxophone solo soar without sounding thin. If your listening space is a cramped apartment, or you're trying to power a whole house with a single pair, you might find them a bit overkill, both in size and in required amplification. Now, let's talk real-world strengths. The biggest thing I noticed right after the first few minutes was the efficiency. Klipsch's heritage of high-efficiency designs really shines here. Once the amp was turned up to a moderate level, the speakers produced a surprisingly loud and dynamic sound without any distortion. I was able to crank up the volume for an action movie, and the bass stayed punchy without the boomy muddiness you get from many other floor standers. The horn-loaded mid-range driver, the new K702, delivered a focused mid-range that made vocalists sound present, like they were right next to the listener, which is great if you do a lot of podcasts or voiceover work. The titanium tweeter's wide dispersion meant I didn't have to sit dead center to get a good high-frequency experience. Moving a few seats to the left or right still left the treble crisp, which is a practical win for families that don't all sit in the same spot. On the downside, the sheer physical footprint of the Forte 4 Heritage can be a hidden trade-off. These units stand over 3 feet tall and are fairly wide, so you need to make sure you have enough wall clearance and a solid floor that can handle their weight. In my setup, I had to rearrange a side table and move a bookshelf further back, otherwise the speakers would have been too close to the wall, leading to a slightly exaggerated bass response, what we call boundary gain. Also, while the horns give you great efficiency, they do tend to be a bit forward-facing, meaning that in a very reflective room you might catch a whiff of harshness when you raise the treble boost. I had to dial back the high-frequency level a notch in the receiver to keep the overall sound from getting too shiny. That isn't a deal-breaker, but it's something to be aware of if you plan to use them in a small, heavily tiled space. Another practical consideration is the amplification requirement. Because these speakers are relatively easy to drive, you won't need a massive power amp, but you do need something that can handle the dynamic peaks without clipping. I paired them with a mid-range 100 watt per channel integrated amp, and the combination was smooth. If you were hoping to use a tiny stereo receiver that only pushes 30 watts per channel, you might find the bass lacking depth or the overall volume feeling restrained. The rule of thumb here is to match the speaker's efficiency with an amp that can comfortably exceed the speaker's rated power handling, even if you're not planning on cranking the volume to party levels. So, who should buy these? Think of the home theater enthusiast who wants a clean, cinematic experience without adding a separate subwoofer, the audiophile who appreciates a speaker that can handle both music and movies, and anyone who values a speaker that can be easily integrated into a pre-existing system. The Heritage finished distressed oak also makes them a design statement for living rooms that lean toward a classic or rustic aesthetic. If your decor is ultra-modern with sleek black finishes, the visual appeal may not match your taste, but you could always paint the cabinets, though that would void the designed and assembled in the USA brag, which I respect for its craftsmanship claim. On the flip side, if you're on a tight budget, the Forte 4 Heritage isn't the cheapest floor-standing option out there. The price reflects the premium drivers, the horn design, and